Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is episode 2 of the NFL Legacy podcast. Today, we just got Alex and Sam. Jack's out with a little bit of a sickness. He got sick a few days ago, so he won't be with us today. So we just got Alex and Sam. Today, we're going to be looking over some minor free agency moves that happened, some contract extensions that have been signed, and then we'll be talking a lot about the upcoming draft for 2021. It's in roughly 4 weeks. Believe it's a little less than a month. So we'll be looking at some of the top prospects pro days and some of the trades that happened with the draft picks coming up. So to start things off, for free agency, first thing we have is Sammy Watkins signed with Baltimore. You got any thoughts on this, Sam?
Coming from a team that needs a number one receiver really, really, really bad. Sammy Watkins is a good fit. His health is kind of concerning. I think he has 2 full seasons under his belt, and he's been in the league for 6 or 7 years. When healthy, Sammy Watkins can be a game changer. I mean, he proved it in the Super Bowl when he was with the Chiefs, that he burned Richard Sherman up and down the field, and he gave credit to Devontae Adams. But at the end of the day, Sammy Watkins can be a playmaker. I think he opens up the field for Lamar Jackson, and I think that might also drop receiver as a need in their first round. They might still go receiver, but I think they have bigger needs on that team now that Orlando Brown wants out. Something they might end up going offensive line, which could shake up the entire draft.
Do you think Sammy Watkins is the answer for their wide receiver one issue?
I wouldn't say answer. I'm saying competition. It's always good to have a vet for number one. I mean, they had Willie Snead, and Willie Snead's not nearly as fluid as Sammy Watkins is as a receiver. Sammy Watkins, I believe, is when healthy, Sammy Watkins is a very, very, very good receiver, very much above average. But I don't see how it would. How do I say that? I don't see if it would absolutely fix it. I can't put all faith in that due to his health. When healthy, if he stays healthy, yes, he very well could be the solution. But I can't say yes knowing that he might get hurt. You know?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good thought there. My whole thing with this is that their offense last year was very run oriented. I mean, you have Lamar Jackson, who obviously is one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in the league. He's such a threat both through the air and on the ground. They had Mark Ingram and then the outbreak of J.K. Dobbins last year. They were so run oriented, and then really their only wide receiver threat was Marquise Brown. So bringing in Sammy Watkins will be a massive help to their defense or to their offense, excuse me, and it'll allow them to be more versatile on offense. But they also had serious talks with Kenny Golladay and T.Y. Hilton and Juju Smith-Schuster, and all three of them backed out of signing with Baltimore. The reasons for that, we don't know. But the fact that they got another wide receiver for Lamar Jackson is huge for Baltimore.
I can tell you why why the receivers backed out. You look at the quarterback situation at the teams they went to. Danny Dimes very well could be a good passing quarterback. He really hasn't had a fair shot because I don't think he's really had a true number one. We can go look at, you said the Ravens. Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson's a good quarterback, but throwing downfield is one of Lamar Jackson's struggles, in my opinion. I'm not saying statistically he's a bad quarterback. I'm saying that throwing downfield is something Lamar Jackson hasn't done very well in the past. Which is why him and Marquise Brown are a good connection sometimes, but not always something you can bank on. I know that Juju Smith-Schuster decided to stay with Pitt and be loyal. T.Y. Hilton decided to go back to Indy, but you also look at the Indianapolis quarterback. They just got Carson Wentz, and I think with Carson Wentz with a healthy line, a good offensive line, is scarier than Lamar Jackson with no Orlando Brown and that offensive line needing to be revamped completely. You just look at situation, man. I mean, the situation in the offense that they're in, I believe all the offenses that you named between Indy, which is where T.Y. Hilton went, Pitt, Juju, and then New York are all more creative offenses than anything Baltimore has drawn up in the past 3 years. And I think that's a little bit more pulling towards receivers is that, it's not just going to be we need to run the ball. It's going to be we're going to pass the ball.
Yeah, and that's actually a good comparison for T.Y. Hilton, wanting to go back to Indy because they just got Carson Wentz, who will be reunited with Frank Reich, who was, I believe he was an offensive coordinator for Philadelphia in 2017 when they actually went on to win the Super Bowl. And so he'll be back with Frank Reich, who worked wonders for that offense, and a top 3 offensive line in Indianapolis. And then they got T.Y. Hilton and Jonathan Taylor, who had an amazing breakout year last year. So I think Indianapolis will be good. But Sammy Watkins he'll be a help because he'll be that veteran presence, like you said. But I don't think he's going to be the answer. I think he'll just be a temporary solution. I'm pretty sure that he signed a 1-year deal. I don't think it was anything more than that. So we'll
So
see
he
where it
signed a
goes.
1 year. He signed a 1 year prove it deal, but like this was the year to prove it. You know what I mean? And
Right.
he could go back and get big money, especially if they move that Orlando Brown contract. They I mean, and the word is they're still in talks with like multiple teams. I believe they're in talks with the Bears still, which could involve an Allen Robinson trade. So to be honest, they could be doing everything they can to solve that receiver need. But don't sleep on Sammy Watkins possibly taking that job. If Sammy Watkins can prove that he can be consistent this year, I see him landing that job pretty smoothly.
I agree. I agree. Moving on from Watkins, we have center Austin Blythe going to Kansas City on a 1-year deal. So last week, or a few weeks ago, they released 2 of their best offensive linemen in, I believe their names were Mitchell Schwartz, and I'm blanking on the other.
Eric Fisher.
There you go, Eric Fisher. So they released both of them, and then they brought in Joe Thuney on a massive 5-year deal. I believe it was worth $80 million. So bringing in another center who is a veteran presence on that offensive line will be helpful because they just released 2 of their biggest offensive line
Three.
assets. 3? Did they?
Austin Ryder's gone, I believe.
I did not see
Their
that.
center. Their center's gone. So
Oh,
they're
that makes
missing
this
three
signing
pieces. But like what
a
doesn't
lot
make
more
sense to
sense.
me on these signings though is like you're signing interior linemen when you need 2 tackles.
Right. Yeah.
Like
I mean,
it you can go.
it it makes sense to me because they want to get offensive linemen, obviously because they just got rid of 2 of their best ones. But they brought in Joe Thuney, who is primarily a guard. Austin Blythe is a center. And neither one of them have played too much of any other offensive lineman position outside of what they are declared as for their position. So, I mean, it makes sense that they're targeting offensive line. I like the route that they're trying to go to protect Patrick Mahomes and give their running backs, whoever it may be, past Clyde Edwards-Helaire, next year or in the future years, they're trying to protect them and give them more routes, I guess, to go in their offense.
Right.
But I just think that they need to get better offensive linemen. And maybe they'll target it in the draft. We don't know.
Well, the thing that confuses me too is like you look at the Super Bowl and they got killed because their tackles were out. Like their entire offensive line was out, of course. That's a well-known fact. But they were getting edge rushed in the backup tackles were not doing it. Are they going to address tackle in the draft or are they going to address it now? Cuz like I would address it now and wait for the like if I was Kansas City, I'm calling Jared Veldheer because he's cheap and I don't have a lot of money left. And he's a good tackle. He started in playoff games. He started with the Colts. Like he's a guy that you could bring in and plug and play. And like I don't see they're just not addressing the position. It's anything is an upgrade from what they have currently on that roster. And I get that Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz are a lot of money, but I would have kept one of them. I mean, you're losing all these players and you're signing interior linemen instead of exterior linemen. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And I mean, this upcoming draft is also very deep at the tackle position. So maybe they can target a tackle. I mean, obviously, they're not going to get Penny Sewell, who's the top rated tackle prospect in this upcoming draft, but they could target a tackle in the 2nd or 3rd round. And hopefully, he'll be a huge hit for Kansas City because, like you said, anything is an upgrade for that offensive line unit right now.
Yeah, because I'm already reading that Penny just had a huge meeting. We'll get on that later, but he just had a huge meeting with the Bengals, which could mean he's going top 5.
For
But
sure.
that like I don't know I could see a landing spot for them being like a Tevin Jenkins or a Samuel Cosme out of Texas. Like just they need tackles. It's a well known factor on the league. They have a mothership of a bunch of players and a bunch of positions that are just great for them to have, and they're missing the offensive line for the arguably the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, my perspective on this is the reason that they lost the Super Bowl was because they got obliterated in the pass rush. I mean,
Absolutely.
you can't have a depleted offensive line going up against Jason Pierre-Paul, Ndamukong Suh, Shaq Barrett, Levante David, Devin White. You can't have guys like that running over and bullying your offensive line, having Patrick Mahomes running 30 plus yards to save his life.
This may be a hot take, but any Todd Bowles defense would have shredded that Chiefs offensive line that night. Todd Bowles is one heck of a coordinator, and they had the players in the piece, but like Todd Bowles would have done that with the Jets when he was still with them. Todd Bowles has been a defensive mastermind for so long, but like, dude, I don't know. It's just a very strange situation in Kansas, and I'm excited to see how it shakes out because, I mean, again, that's the end of the first. The end of the first also reshapes the second, so.
Yeah, that's very true. All right. Last one, free agent we've got today is running back Kevin Ballage going to Pittsburgh on a 1-year deal. I don't really know what to make out of the signing. I mean, it's more running back depth for Pittsburgh, but I mean, Kevin Ballage, he's been good, not great. It's just kind of to me.
He's been bouncing around the league for a little bit now,
He
though, and
has,
like
yeah.
he had like a good like a decent season, but like after that, bro, like he kind of fizzled out, and like I think it's a good situation for him in Pittsburgh because I believe they don't have James Conner anymore, um, so it could be a good situation for him, but I don't know. I guess
Yeah,
what to
I
wait and
mean,
see.
it's not too much of a blockbuster signing, but it'll help. I think it's good for both sides.
Pittsburgh hasn't really had a running game since Rashad Mendenhall, though. Oh, Le'Veon Bell, I lied.
Yeah,
Le'Veon Bell,
I was about to say
dude,
Le'Veon
I
Bell.
totally, I totally, I totally forgot that like he was there. But
Yeah.
like even then, they really didn't have any sense. Like James Conner played like a good year, and then like once their offensive line started to go, their run game started to deplete really quick, and like James Conner went downhill, and like they brought in a bunch of guys trying to like compete that spot, but it just never shored up, and that's why their offense seemed repetitive last season. It seemed like it was just slants. It would seem like it was just outs, like it was just quick little routes to get off because they didn't have a run game. Their run game's completely gone.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and now that James Conner's gone, I think this is a decent signing for maybe depth if they plan on addressing it. But I don't know, man. It's a weird place for the Steelers to be.
Yeah, and this draft also isn't super good for running backs either.
Unless they
So
want to
I
go
don't.
first round and get ETN. I mean,
Yeah, that's really about it. You got Najee Harris, and that's yeah,
Javante Williams.
yeah, that's true. I don't know if he'll fall all the way to Pittsburgh though,
You
but
never know. I mean,
we'll
he's
see.
supposed to fall the second.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what Pittsburgh does with their running back situation. So, all right, that's all we got for free agents. Contract extensions. The first one we have is Leonard Fournette re-signed with Tampa Bay, and this
Smart resigning.
actually it is a smart re-signing, and this actually means that Tampa Bay has successfully brought back all 22 starters from last season, which is
See,
pretty scary to think about.
I like that they brought back all their starters. Do I think they'll repeat their success? Absolutely not. I think, and this is a hot take. We're gonna get right into it. I think that shell defense that Bulls runs is gonna there's gonna be a loophole around it within offenses this year because once Todd Bowles introduced that, notice how nobody could stop it. But now like that is a big priority to stop it, and like a lot of defense are gonna be trying to run it because it worked so well last season. It's gonna have some sort of loophole. An offense is gonna come up with something to shut down that shell defense. I see them in this like possibly making the Super Bowl, but I don't see them going very far as much as they were. I would say they get knocked out in the divisional round this year.
Yeah, I mean, as it looks, the NFC South is probably Tampa Bay's division because New Orleans, they lost Drew Brees, who's an
Yep.
awesome. He wasn't his usual self last year, but he was still an amazing leader for that offense. The Falcons are kind of hit or miss, and Carolina is kind of in the same boat, unless some sort of trade happens with Deshaun Watson or they get Justin Fields or they address quarterback. But the NFC South is probably Tampa Bay's division as
I
of
mean,
now.
yeah, it's their division. I mean, but you also look around the league too. I personally think, and we're fans of the NFC North, so I'll say this outright. I think the NFC North will have three playoff teams next year. With the seven slots, you got Detroit with, I mean, Goff is there, but they made some good signings. With a new head coach, I could see them making like the last play wild card spot. I can see the Minnesota Vikings hitting because they had one heck of an offseason again. They get a lot of players back, but I could see the Green Bay Packers again making it as well. And this could be the revenge tour. I don't know, man. It's been really we've been saying revenge tour for so long, but the Packers have just underperformed in the playoffs. So
It's hard to predict what is going to happen with
yeah,
Green Bay every single year.
yeah, and like that's the thing is like it's the NFL. Anything can happen. Um, my personal opinion is I just don't see Tampa repeating their success. Yes, it was a very good season for them. Yes, they played very well. Yes, they were spotty at times when they should have won games and they didn't. The Saints game, number one to begin, but
Yeah,
they really shook it up and showed what they can do. But I don't know if what they can do is going to be enough this next season
that's very
because
true.
times change. Everything changes. When the league resets for a year, everything changes.
Absolutely. And Tampa Bay, they've always been kind of like the bad teams, I guess, before Tom Brady got there. They've been okay before Brady got there, but after like 2003, 2004, they were kind of just bad. But once Brady got there, I mean, they didn't have the best record at all last year, but they were a lot better than their record showed. And I believe that they were a 5 seed last year, yes, in the
Yep.
playoffs. Okay. So, I mean, they were a lot better of a team than the record showed, but they were also in an incredibly tough division with New Orleans being a juggernaut of a team that they were. But I don't see them winning that division this next year. I don't see them winning the South.
No, I don't see the Buccaneers getting knocked out, which is why I said divisional round. I think that Tampa Bay gets knocked out in the first round of the playoffs though when they go. Um,
Okay.
that's a really, really hot take, but I see if they personally, I think if they would have English, if they would have went against the Rams number one round with a healthy Aaron Donald, they would have lost. I think
Okay.
that the Rams would have be. I think Sean McVay would have found a way to overcome that shell defense to the point where they would not have been able to react the way they should have. Tom Brady calls a lot of plays, yes, but that defense with a healthy Aaron Donald is not the same as the Packers defense with Kenny Clark, and they struggled to contain that.
Well,
Um,
yes, and the Rams secondary is all around is a better unit than Green Bay's than we saw in the
was
NFC Championship. Well, yes, was currently not, but last year they had Jalen Ramsey, John Johnson, and then they
Troy
had
Hill.
Aaron Donald, yeah, Troy Hill as well, and they just they had such a deep secondary unit that I think I kind of agree with you on this. If Tampa Bay went up against the Rams, I think they probably would have lost.
Oh, absolutely. The Ram with a healthy Aaron Donald, which we got lucky, and Aaron Donald was not healthy. And he didn't play a lot of that game. AJ Dillon carried us to that game, and I don't think that would have changed a lot. But I think that hole that Leonard Fournette would have run through would have been very slim. I don't think Leonard Fournette's as big of a power back as people credit him. I think he's a decent running back, but I don't think he's as good as people are hyping him up to be. Um, because we've seen what he does and what he does, like when he's by himself. Basically, he's not any sort of needle moving running back for me. Um, but I personally think that they would have lost to the Rams. I think there's two other teams in that playoff race they would have lost to. The Buffalo Bills are a good one. That if the Bills would have went to the Super Bowl, I think the Bills would have taken the Buccaneers out. Um, Packers were another team I have on my list, and I'm not even salty about it. Like it was a well fought game. But that was another team that very well could have taken them out. I think that Tampa Bay has a lot of challenges coming for him next year, and it's not going to hit till after until after the season.
That's very true. I like that the defending Super Bowl champs are able to bring back all 22 starters. But
That's
I do
yeah, that's
think that
good.
their defense is honestly what made them as good as they were in the postseason. Their
Yep.
offense was always outstanding with Tom Brady, Leonard Fournette, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, OJ Howard, Gronk. They had so many weapons on offense, and surrounding Tom Brady with all those weapons is obviously a good thing because he never really had that in New England. But their defense is what made that team. Defense wins championships.
That man had Randy Moss. Don't tell me he didn't have any weapons.
Okay, he didn't have as many weapons in New England as
Dion
he did in Tampa
Branch.
Bay. At the same time,
Okay, all right, I'll give you
that's
that. Dude,
yeah, that's
Dion
that's what I'm
Branch was
trying
a
to say.
monster, though. Everyone
Yeah,
forgets about him. He was an animal.
yes. All right, moving on from Tampa Bay and Leonard Fournette. We have left tackle Colton Miller. He re-signed with Las Vegas Raiders on a 3-year, $54 million deal.
I make fun of this pick a lot. Like, I
Yeah.
make fun of this Raiders pick a lot because I remember sitting on my couch watching the draft, thinking the Raiders, if I'm correct, I thought they were going edge rusher. I was sitting there thinking they were going edge rusher to give Khalil Mack someone on the other side. And they ended up drafting a left tackle that nobody had ever heard of. He was like a second round pick on everybody's boards. Colton Miller he had a terrible rookie season, but he really turned it around. Las Vegas got him on a very cheap side because they're like, we'll pay you now because you're playing really well. Um, and we'll give you this amount of money. And for a lineman, that's a good amount of money, but they got it quite a deal on like a good left tackle. Um, so I think it's a good signing. I like this signing a lot. But I do make
Yeah.
fun of this Colton Miller pick, and I use it a lot as an example of off the wall stuff that the Raiders do for the draft.
Yeah, I like this pick as well or this signing, I guess, because Las Vegas is a lot better of a team in my eyes than a lot of people see them out to be. I mean, they're also, again, not going to win the division because Kansas City and all that stuff. But I do think that I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this next year, but in 2022, I do think they could squeak in as a wild card.
They have to. You know, you can go.
I think Las Vegas is pending some major moves. I do think that Las Vegas is a playoff caliber team. Not now,
Good.
but in a year or two, they could
I'm
be.
glad I didn't interrupt you because I think the major moves you're talking about is a different quarterback, and I agree. They need to figure out what's going on with Mariota and Carr and who they're going to roll with. That's number one. They need to either figure it out or draft somebody because right now, as it stands, I'm sorry, Carr is very inconsistent. Marcus Mariota is very inconsistent, and they don't have a lot to work with at quarterback. They don't have a lot of they don't draft well at receiver either, and that's what pains them because they brought in Tyrell Williams to be a receiver number one, and that didn't pan out. Tyrell was not good. I'm sorry. And then they brought in Henry Ruggs, who he was my favorite wide receiver last year. I don't think it was the right situation for him. But you just look around at like who they brought in at receiver, and like they really don't bring anybody in. The person that they drafted to be a receiving threat has done everything for them, and it's Darren Waller. I mean, like that's their only receiving threat right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Darren Waller is probably their only receiver threat. I don't think Henry Ruggs I don't think he's in the right situation for a guy like him because he's a deep threat. And Derek Carr, he's extremely inconsistent. But a few years ago, I believe 2014, 2015, one of those two, he had an MVP caliber year until he had that heartbreaking leg injury. I don't
Right.
see him ever returning to that form, but he
No,
has shown that he can play quarterback at a very high level.
he can play
So,
at a high level, but for how long? That's it. The NFL is a very "what have you done for me lately" league. Like it's not a what did you do way back then. It's a what have you done for me lately. And like that's the problem is like a lot of these players are not going to get the chance to be like, oh, well, I can do this for you, but I did this back in 2014. Like, no one really cares. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very young league now. It's turning into a very, very, very young league.
yeah, absolutely. And Derek Carr's getting up there in age. I believe he's 30. Like on the
Yep.
dot, he's 30, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
So I don't know. We'll see what they do with quarterback. I do think that they have to move on or decide what they want to do between Mariota and Carr.
Yeah,
So
100%.
absolutely. All right. Second to last one, we've got former Packer Mike Daniels re-signing with Cincinnati on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal.
I like it. I mean, I like the signing. They got rid of Gino, which is kind of huge, like really big. Gino was very expensive, but they really didn't have a lot of depth at that position. Um, but they really showed that they could still work with what they had when Gino went down because Gino is always hurt. So I mean I like the signing of Mike Daniels. Mike Daniels is a good player when healthy. He's very good. He can anchor it down and he can hold it down. But again, hasn't really been there lately, which is why this deal is very good because it's only 2.5 million. So it's a high reward and low risk. So I like the signing.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, he's a veteran presence for a pretty young Cincinnati defensive unit. So having a guy who has been to late postseason runs with Green Bay and has been with some extremely good defensive players on his side, I think it's really good for Cincinnati. And it's super, super cheap deal for a veteran like Mike Daniels.
Absolutely.
All right. Last one is Tyler Lockett re-signed with the Seattle Seahawks today. I believe it was today. It was either today or yesterday for a
Yesterday.
4-year, $69 million deal. This,
So, you can go.
yeah, I have quite a little bit to say on this. So this signing to me sets the wide receiver market. Him and Kenny Golladay set the wide receiver market because you have guys. The first one that comes to my head is Davante Adams because Green Bay still has to re-sign him if they want to keep him. And putting up 18 touchdowns in 2020 while missing 2.5 games. Oh my gosh, it's going to be a big deal once Green Bay re-signs Davante, or if Davante goes to another team, he's going to get a big payday. These two wide receivers in Tyler Lockett and Kenny Golladay set the wide receiver market in my eyes.
And this is where I hit you with 2 words: Russ Ball. We will never get rid of any player who's that valuable to us. We'll find a way to backload the contract and figure it out later. Because that's always been a what do the Packers do situation. Like, we can look as far as Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith. We thought we were going to cut Preston this year. But they found a way to save us the same money and just push it back a year. Like, this is what Russ Ball is so incredibly talented at what he does for the Green Bay Packers that Davante Adams contract doesn't worry me. It's expensive. It's going to be very expensive, but Russ Ball will find a way to make it work. Tyler Lockett, on the other hand, is one of the most talented receivers in the league, and he's just so slept on.
Absolutely.
We have watched him multiple times toast our entire team. The guy can torch anybody at any time. He's a route running specialist. The guy can catch everything his catch radius is insane for his size. Like, the guy is an absolute monster, and nobody gives him the credit he deserves. I think that this is a beautiful, beautiful extension, and it was well deserved.
And he's on the other side of DK Metcalf, who, say what you want about DK Metcalf, he is one of the elite wide receivers in the NFL. And having a veteran of Tyler Lockett's caliber on the other side of him is amazing. And still having Russell Wilson as your quarterback, Seattle, if they can figure out what they want to do with their defense, they're going to be another scary team again, unfortunately.
So that's my worry, though, is DK Metcalf's contract. Because now you're paying that much to receivers. If you pay both receivers that much, you're not going to have a lot to work with in like other departments. And them paying Tyler Lockett that much as wide receiver too shows me that they need to pay DK Metcalf a certain amount. Shows me that Russell Wilson's contract is the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
I'm thinking they might be getting ready to pull a trigger on a deal in like the next year. And that's why they're doing this. It's because DK is what, in his 3rd year? They have a 5th-year option. They have a couple years to work with, but I don't know, man. I don't know how many teams are going to offer 3 first-round picks on the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know why Seattle didn't take that, to be honest. But I mean,
because
I'll
you
trust
don't
them.
give up a franchise QB, and that's like the number one guideline is like we did it with Brett Favre. We got rid of a franchise QB, and it did hurt. I mean, it hurt us for a year where we were 8-8, and then we ended up going to Super. We won't talk about that. We ended up winning games, but I mean, you see it happen all around the league. Franchise QBs get moved. Prime example is next season will be Matthew Stafford. Watch, because he's gonna light up the league. Matthew Stafford is gonna put the league on notice, and the Rams will be the scariest team in the NFC. That is my number one prediction. Is that the Rams are the scariest team in the NFC. But I think that's a prime example of why they didn't do it. You just don't give up your franchise QB.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah, it's not every day that you get 3 first-round picks offered to you.
They gave up 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams. So
Yeah, that's very true. And he hasn't exactly panned out. I mean, we've only seen a season-ish of him, but he hasn't been super, super good.
he needs
So,
to be moved to linebacker. That's why.
yeah. I mean, and going back to the quarterback situation, when you mentioned that Green Bay moved on from Brett Favre, not every team can go from a Brett Favre to an Aaron
Right.
Rodgers.
That's why
So,
it's so hesitant.
right. And it makes sense. We got extremely lucky that we got Aaron Rodgers. And hopefully we'll see what happens with Jordan Love. Hopefully we can go from a Brett Favre to an Aaron Rodgers to a Jordan Love. But we'll see. That's a topic for another time.
I wouldn't be surprised. Before we move on, actually, no, you have pro days in there, right?
Yes, I do.
We'll wait for that.
Okay. All right. Moving on from all the contract extensions. The first, I guess, big trade that we've seen is the 49ers and the Miami Dolphins and the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'll give a quick rundown of what happened. Originally, Miami had pick number 3 from Houston for the Laramie Tunsil trade, I believe. So they had number 3 pick. They traded that to San Francisco for the number 12 pick, a 2021 third rounder, and 2 first rounders, one in 2022 and one in 2023. And then a few hours or another day after, the Philadelphia Eagles then traded their number 6 overall pick and the number 156th overall pick to Miami for Miami's then acquired number 12 pick, number 123, and a first round pick in 2022. So the 49ers have pick number 3, the Miami Dolphins have pick number 6, and the Eagles have pick number 12. If you got lost.
Yeah. So the thing that this shows me as a person, I think you and Jack know more than anybody. I study the draft like no other. The draft is like my best friend. Like I love working the draft and figuring it out. This shows me that 4 quarterbacks will go in the first 5 picks.
Okay.
I think that everything that why can't I think of the guy's name? John Lynch. Everything John Lynch is saying about Jimmy G as our starter is a smokescreen. I think they're going to end up either going with Trey Lance or Mac Jones. I think it's going to go Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, or Mac Jones, either or. And I think the Falcons are going to end up going with Justin Fields. And I think that's how it's going to go. I don't see a world where it goes any differently. The only way it could go differently is if the Jets decide to go Penny Sewell. I don't see the Niners trading out of the QB situation that they have presented in front of them right now. Jimmy G is a good quarterback, but he's never healthy, like ever. I don't think it's a good. I think it's good for them to try to look ahead of what they can look into. I know they tried with Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins looked really good for a little bit. I know they tried with CJ Beathard. CJ Beathard looked good for a little bit. But it's all sample size QBs. They need something they can rely on. I think this is where that's why they traded 3. You don't trade 3 years worth of drafts for anything else.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. But Jimmy Garoppolo does have a no trade clause for 2021. He doesn't have it for 2022, but he does have it for 2021. So if San Francisco takes a quarterback, do you think that they sit behind Jimmy G for a year, or do you think they throw him in right away?
No. So hear me out. If I'm Jimmy G, and I see that you drafted a QB, the no trade clause is, if I'm correct, the no trade clause is, I'm saying you can't trade me.
I believe so. I believe that's how that works.
Probably waive the no trade clause so he can get out of there. Because I know that the Patriots have been calling every day trying to get him back.
Even with them resigning Cam Newton?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They have been calling on Jimmy G, trying to get Jimmy G back to New England. There's been multiple sources reporting it, that the Patriots have been checking in and still trying to find a price. And I just heard that San Fran wants at least a first rounder for him, which you're not going to get a first rounder.
Yeah.
Especially if Carson Wentz didn't even warrant a first rounder. You're not going to get a first rounder. But it'll be interesting to see how the situation shakes out. I think he would waive his no trade clause, though. Because if I'm Jimmy G, I'm young. I'm sorry. This is going to sound really stubborn. I'm not teaching another quarterback how to do my job on, Brett Favre, but I'm not teaching another QB how to take my job. And especially when they're 2 completely different QBs. They go Trey Lance, he's a completely different QB than Jimmy Garoppolo. They go Mac Jones. They have something a little similar, but Jimmy was a little bit more mobile. Trey Lance is a big bodied quarterback, but he's not how Jimmy G is. So either way you go, I mean, you can't teach. Jimmy G doesn't even have the mindset, I think, of a veteran. So I don't know if they'd stick with him. I think
Do
they
you
would probably come to an agreement and get a no trade clause waived.
do you think that San Francisco can possibly go with Justin Fields?
No,
How
no,
come?
because you and I both know that Kyle Shanahan is a genius and history repeats itself. And I think we all do know that history repeats itself.
Yep.
Ohio State quarterbacks are not good.
We will touch on that later. We'll move on from San Francisco for now. And perhaps the biggest NFL news that probably I've seen in my lifetime is that the NFL expanded its regular season to 17 games from the original 16 on March 30th. So for this year, all of the NFC teams will go on the road to visit an AFC team. And next year, that will probably flip-flop because that's how logistics work out. That's how the Super Bowl is hosted, who's home games. That's probably how it'll work out. We'll see. But as of now, all NFC teams will go on the road to visit an AFC team.
Okay. So this is interesting to me because I know a lot of players aren't happy about it. Which I won't be either. I got to stress out my body for another game. But the schedule, how the way it shook out, is just interesting to me because, you know, the way that it divided and to give everybody a week, are they going to come up with another way to give another bye? Like, what are they going to do about this? Is it just going to be added on? How are they going to rework the buys? Because some people are going to have a week 4 bye week, and then they're going to have to basically play a full season. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we saw how that worked out with Green Bay. They had to go, and yes, they got a first round bye in the playoffs, but they had a week 4 bye last year. I'm pretty certain.
Mm-hmm.
So they played their first 3 games, had a week 4 bye, and then they had to go through the rest of the season. And they had fatigued, and then they had 2 weeks off for the playoffs or however long the first round bye is.
And then
But then that
injuries.
also led to the staple of Green Bay's offensive line and David Bakhtiari going down. So I think my personal opinion on the 17 game season is that I don't like it at all. As a football fan, I like it because, yes, it's more football games to watch, but looking out for players' health, I don't like it at all because this just gives players an extra game to get hurt. It gives them an extra game to, have that career ending injury, season ending injury. And it's just, I think that it'll come back to bite the players' health.
They have to find a way to balance out the bye weeks if they want to make this work. Like you
Absolutely.
can't make a guy play 14 weeks after giving them like a week 3 bye. Like you can't. It's not physically good for the body.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I just I'm with you. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think it's a very bad idea.
And perhaps the biggest game that will get added onto this season is Green Bay at Kansas City. And this did happen in 2019, but Patrick Mahomes was hurt. So we never got to see the Aaron Rodgers against Patrick Mahomes, the old age against the new age. Barring any injuries, assuming both of them are healthy, which hopefully they will be, we will see Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead Stadium in 2021, which will be a blockbuster of a game. Hopefully, there's no injuries. Hopefully, we get to see Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. But that's the biggest game that is on this list. So I have the whole schedule, but there's no point in reading it out.
You mean we're gonna go see the State Farm Bowl?
Yeah, maybe we'll get a rematch of it in the Super Bowl. I mean, that's what people have been predicting for like 3 years
I
now
would
is
love that.
Green Bay and Kansas City, Green Bay, Kansas City.
See,
So we'll see.
the thing and like the cool thing about Green Bay and Kansas City that would be a good matchup is that we're two completely different offenses. But we both are
Absolutely.
high-powered offenses. We're completely different. Like they're a heavy like passing offense. We're a heavy run offense right now. We have a lot of passing, like not a lot of passing. We have some passing plays thrown in where they have some run plays. We're the complete opposite. Their defense is completely opposite of ours. I think our defense is better than their defense, and I think that's where it's going to lie on, though.
Yes, because defense wins championships. I will say that
Yep.
until the day I die.
Yep. Always has, always will.
Always will. All right, moving on from that, we have the Chicago Bears. So a few weeks ago, they signed Andy Dalton to a 1-year, I believe, $10 million deal. And then they franchise tagged Allen Robinson. And then they also released Kyle Fuller. So in just those 3 moves alone, it was already a bit of a dumpster fire. And then today, Bears GM Ryan Pace had a press conference, and he was asked about Andy Dalton, and this is what he said. He goes, the fit with the offense, the leadership that he provides, his decision making, he's been to Pro Bowls. He's one of the more complete QBs we evaluated in free agency, and we're excited to have him. We feel like we got a lot better with Andy, and he's our starting quarterback as we head into the season. And then moving on from Ryan Pace, the Bears head coach Matt Nagy says he will take back play calling duties for this upcoming season. We don't know how long that will last, but as of now, Matt Nagy will be the play caller.
Okay, so I don't like this at all. And another cut to look out for, I think a post-June 1st cut for the Bears will be Akeem Hicks. I think he will be cut. I know it was rumored that he would be cut. I think he actually will be cut post-June 1st. I think that will be something that a lot of teams, you start to see a lot of teams this year that will be cutting people after June 1st, and that's where a lot of the big signings are going to come by, and I think that's where Green Bay is waiting for, which is why they didn't make a move, because they're the only team that has not made a move in free agency. I think that is what they're waiting on, is the June 1st cuts, because they're usually pretty good players that just are like right on the edge of like, oh, well, we're going to save more money if we cut you now.
Right.
So keep that in mind for Chicago. But onto Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy's play calling is so inconsistent, it is ridiculous. How could you put your confidence in a guy who has put the blame on, what is it, 3 different offensive coordinators in his tenure and gotten away with it? Or 2? It was Bill Lazor last year.
Yeah.
And then they had, who was the guy that was like the quarterback coach for the Eagles? I don't know.
I cannot think off the top of my head.
But it was a DeFilippo. Was that their offensive coordinator?
I
think he might have been.
So. I believe so.
I don't know. Regardless, they've had like 3 different offensive coordinators, and Nagy's gotten away with literally giving the blame to them every time, just firing them and moving on. And it's like, dude, like, at what point are you going to understand that this guy is the problem? The problem lies in the GM and the head coach in Chicago. Once they are gone, Chicago will be back to what they need to be. They're at the pick 20 right now. I don't think they're in the range to get a good quarterback. They might reach for one. Pending hear me out. Pending a pro day, Kyle Trask could be a Chicago Bear.
I would love that more than anything else in the world.
Well, that's because we're Packer fans.
I say that all the time on Twitter. I say Kyle Trask will be a Chicago Bear. And if that happens, I will not let up. But going back to Andy Dalton, when he took over for Dak Prescott in 2020, he posted a 64.9 completion percentage. He had a little over 2,000 yards. He played 11 games with 14 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So not a fantastic season, not a good season, but not his worst. He had a worse season in 2019.
Rewind though. Look at who he had catching the ball. No wonder why his completion percentage was in the 60s. Look at what he has in Chicago. He has Darnell Mooney, Allen Robinson. That's it.
I mean, you can stretch and say Cole Kmet, but yeah, no, Darnell Mooney, Allen Robinson, that's about it. And I mean, he does have a running back in David Montgomery. I mean, he kind of had one in Dallas last year with Zeke, but he had so many fumbling issues.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I had Zeke in fantasy, and he almost single-handedly lost me multiple games because of how many times he fumbled.
It's just a completely different, and it's a different offense. Like it'll all depend on what Nagy decides to run, but I don't see this working out well for them. I don't see it panning out at all. I think it's a scapegoat for this year. I think they're covering something bigger up that they wanted. I think they're still waiting out on Russell Wilson. I would not be surprised if they still, keep trying to push that envelope a little bit harder, more and more as time goes on. Because once Andy Dalton underperforms worse than what they thought he was going to be, they're going to add more to that trade.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, they would be smart to pursue Russell Wilson. I mean, I would if I was Chicago. I would go after Russell Wilson. But going back to what you said about Akeem Hicks, you said that they would probably cut him post June 1st?
Yes.
Okay. So I remember a few weeks ago that they actually did give Akeem Hicks permission to seek a trade. So if that goes through, then Chicago could get something back, probably second, maybe third round pick for Akeem Hicks.
Did you hear the trade that the Bears offered
For who?
Russell?
Yeah, it was like what, like 3 first round picks, Akeem Hicks and Kyle Fuller.
3 first-round picks, a third, Akeem Hicks and Kyle Fuller.
I always miss the third. I always miss the third round pick.
But that's a lot of picks, and they didn't take it. I think the Bears are going to get more aggressive. I would not be surprised if they throw a young star in, and that young star's name could be Eddie Jackson.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because I'm pretty sure Eddie Jackson's on a fairly cheap contract, isn't he?
And he's unhappy.
Yeah,
Dude, everybody in that organization is unhappy right now.
Yeah, they are not. They're not. Chicago's not in a good situation at all. They have just done so many questionable moves, and they showed that they were a good playoff caliber team with Mitchell Trubisky as your quarterback. They showed that in, I believe, 2018 when they actually won the NFC North. But then they had the double doink against Philadelphia, and then things just honestly went downhill from there.
It's going to be even worse when Cordero Patterson signs with Green Bay, too.
Yeah, because that's their big special teams guy. Cordero Patterson's their special teams guy, and he most likely won't be re-signing with Chicago.
No, he's been asking for a way out.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to re-sign with Chicago if I were already there and I had the choice. I wouldn't re-sign there, knowing what is happening there down there. Not a chance.
There's no future in sight. There's no future in sight. That's the problem with their situation. Is there's zero future in sight. They're stuck in a win now mentality when they don't have the pieces to win now, in my opinion. They're stuck in a win now situation where they're like, we need to get this person, this person, this person now, so that we can win now, but they don't have the pieces to compete at the high level against like a Green Bay or a Tampa Bay or a Los Angeles. They don't have the pieces. They're lacking those pieces. Cutting your number one corner was definitely the worst thing you could have done, especially when you're stuck in this situation.
Yes. And if I'm pretty sure they cut Kyle Fuller to save money. They probably would have saved more money if they cut him post June 1st. But cutting your number one corner, especially when finding an elite corner in today's NFL, is so hard to do. It's not a good move. There hasn't been a single move that Chicago has made recently where I'm like, yes, that's a good move.
Yeah, I think they signed Desmond Trufant to replace Kyle Fuller.
They did, and he's cheap and he's a veteran, but he's not going to replace Kyle Fuller. He's not as good. He's not as fast. He's not as strong. He's not as physical. It's just it's not a good situation.
Yeah, you've got a very bad situation.
As of now, you've got 3 super good defensive players on Chicago. You got Khalil Mack, you got Eddie Jackson, and you got Akeem Hicks. Akeem Hicks will probably be gone. Oh, Roquan. I missed Roquan. So those 4, that's about it. Offense, you got Darnell Mooney, Allen Robinson, David Montgomery.
Yeah.
That's about it. That's like what, 7 positions out of the 22 starters?
Well, and I heard they were trying to shop Anthony Miller already too.
Oh my God. Chicago, what are you doing? I'm a Packer fan, but what are you doing?
Hey, dude, Anthony Miller is such a nice receiver too. Like, he's a guy that is he reminds me of a Randall Cobb because he's where you need him to be. But maybe not Randall Cobb. I'll go James Jones. He's just where you need him to be, and he gets the ball. Like,
he doesn't do anything spectacucular. He's not one of the elite wide receivers in the NFL, but he's reliable. He's consistent.
Exactly. That's it. Like, dude. I remember when they had Taylor Gabriel and Anthony Miller, and I was so nervous for the Packers. Luckily, we got Jair Alexander, but like I was so nervous that we were going to get burned every game, and I'm so glad we didn't.
Chicago has shown that they can compete with a quarterback like Mitchell Trubisky. Is Andy Dalton better than Mitchell Trubisky? We'll see. It's kind of 50-50 for me, but they showed that they were literally one quarterback away from making a serious playoff run.
The flat out no for me.
You don't think Dalton's better than Trubisky?
Absolutely not. I think Trubisky put up better stats last year, dude.
He did, but he also had more games played, I believe.
Yeah, but he also had less weapons. Like, he also threw less picks. I mean,
he also that's true. All right, moving on from Chicago because we could go on for hours. We could go on for hours. we'll go on to the pro days. So the first one I wanted to talk about is Alabama quarterback Mac Jones. He's probably the lowest top quarterback prospect on most people's boards. Maybe he's above Trey Lance, but anyway, we'll see what he does. He had visits from John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan from San Francisco, and Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels from New England. Something that's interesting about these two is that they both have ties to Jimmy Garoppolo, because Jimmy Garoppolo was in New England, took over for Brady for a little while when he was suspended, and then obviously he's in San Francisco now. So it's a little interesting. First clip that I saw of Mac Jones is that he threw a 50-yard beauty of a pass to Devontae Smith, and Devontae Smith showed his excellent route running, his insane catch radius, and he just showed that he's still who he showed out to be in the football playoff championship. But then two other clips that I saw was that he had two overthrows on deep balls. And the first one, the first thing that the cameras did was they panned to Bill Belichick, and he was shaking his head like no other human being. He just looked so disappointed. And that's kind of unfortunate to see. But on the second one, the cameras panned immediately to Kyle Shanahan, and he had the fear in his eyes, and that reminded me immediately of Jimmy Garoppolo's overthrow in the Super Bowl against Kansas City, which would have won them the game if they hit it, but they didn't.
I think that Mac Jones is a better QB than Jimmy Garoppolo. Like I think at his ceiling, he'll be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. But I think Mac Jones. See, people hype up all these pro days, dude, but I don't see a problem with showing you're not perfect in a pro day. Like that's what it's for. Is like you're supposed to up your stock, but you can also show that you need improvement. Quarterbacks are projects most of the time.
It's very
the
true.
only one who's not a project in this draft, in my opinion, is Trevor Lawrence. I think that Zach Wilson is still a product. He needs a veteran presence for sure. He's going to need somebody to help him. I think that Justin Fields is a project. I think that with his mobility and stuff, he needs to learn how to maneuver a little bit better. He maneuvers good, but at an NFL level, he's going to get creamed doing some of the stuff he did at Ohio State.
Absolutely.
I think Trey Lance needs a veteran presence. D2 football is, yes, it's a hard D2 division, is much different than the NFL. Way different. I think Mac Jones has a good chance because Alabama literally calls NFL plays. Like they literally call NFL plays. And
they do. But they don't go up against NFL defenses.
No, and that's the thing. He's gonna have to learn how to. Well, Mac Jones can also read a defense, though. He's not a terrible prospect. And like you can touch up his throwing methods. You can touch up his throwing motion to prevent overthrows and stuff. Like Aaron Rodgers has had overthrows. Nobody's 100% perfectly accurate every time. It's not gonna happen. I think that if anyone's gonna take a chance, it'll be Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle Shanahan will give him a shot and bring in a veteran to help coach him up.
I mean,
that veteran will not be Jimmy Garoppolo.
Probably not. But I believe that Mac Jones posted the highest completion percentage in the FBS last season. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the highest completion percentage. So I am confident that he can throw the ball. He shows that he can throw the ball accurately and can read a defense. And obviously Alabama, like you said, calls NFL plays, but going up against NFL defenses will be something that he'll have to adjust to. And every quarterback has to adjust to that when they get to the NFL, because all of the NFL defenses are bigger, stronger, faster, smarter, and they have better defensive coordinators than they do in college. So it's so much of a transition, and quarterback is the hardest position to play in football, that it'll be hard for Mac Jones to, if he doesn't have a veteran around him to help him, it'll be hard for him to adjust to the NFL.
This next one that you're about to go into after Mac Jones is where I'm probably going to go off a little bit.
Okay. Well, let's start. We got Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields. Some notes that I wrote down about him is that he showed off impressive arm strength and accuracy. He had, the first clip that I saw was he rolled out left and he threw the ball across his body on the run while he was rolling left. As a right-handed, that's a very hard maneuver to do, throwing a football, and he threw it far and accurate. So that was impressive to me. And then he also showed with that play that he can throw on the run and accurately. And then one last thing is that they measured his 40-yard dash as a 4.44. I'm not quite buying that, but that's what they measured him as. So
You ready?
I'll let you go. You got a tangent to go on.
All right. Hot take of the day. We're gonna go on number 2. Jordan Love is a top 3 QB prospect if he stayed last year. And here's why. That throw that Justin Fields did, that Zach Wilson did, that everyone's hyping up, Jordan Love did that in a game more than once. Jordan Love at his pro day threw 75 yards comfortably from the
Yeah,
35 into the back of the end zone. The the people that think that this is impressive were the same people that said Jordan Love was going to be a bust.
that's very true. And it's because Jordan Love didn't go to a big name school like BYU or Ohio State. He went to Utah State.
I see, and like this isn't even just because I'm a Packer fan, dude. I love Jordan Love as a prospect coming out of the draft. I didn't like that we picked him, but I liked him as a quarterback coming out of the draft. I
I'm the
literally thought
exact
Minnesota
same
was going
way.
to take him. I thought Minnesota was going to take him before we even got a chance. Um, I still thought he was a top 3 QB prospect. I thought he was ahead of Herbert, in my opinion. I definitely probably wrong. Herbert definitely proved everybody wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think Jordan Love, if he was in this draft class, is a top 3, and I don't think he's number 3. I'd put him ahead of Zach Wilson. Um, I would I'd put him right behind Trevor Lawrence if I was making this board. But the moral of the story is, dude, Justin Fields worries me because, as you were gonna say, and I'll say it for you, history of Ohio State QBs is awful. Awful. JT Barrett was a phenomenal college football QB. Came to the NFL, didn't do anything. Give me another name. We can go on for
Uh,
days.
Dwayne Haskins was another one.
Spent more time in the strip club than he did on the field.
Very true.
Um, we can
Um,
go all day for all QBs that played at Ohio State and didn't pan out, and it's a disgustingly long list. I see Fields being better than that, but I don't see him overcoming that narrative, if you know what I mean.
yes, and I'm going to touch on this a little bit. Between 1982 and 2019, there was not a single Ohio State quarterback that was selected in the first round. The one in 1982 was Art Schlichter. I don't know if I said that last name right, but he was probably one of the best quarterbacks in that draft from what I read. Obviously, I wasn't around for that, but he also had massive gambling issues, and that led to his fall in the NFL. And then Dwayne Haskins, he, like you said, spent more time in strip clubs than he did on the field. And I believe he's with Pittsburgh now. Yes, he's not with Washington anymore.
Dude, I don't even know where he went. Yeah, I think he's
I'm
with Pittsburgh.
I'm pretty sure he's with Pittsburgh. Um, and then, in my opinion, the best of the Ohio State quarterbacks is Mike Tomczak. He went 10-5 with the Steelers in 1996 and also won a ring in Super Bowl 20 with the Bears. But with the Ohio State quarterbacks, there are quite a few of them that were drafted as a quarterback and then showed that they couldn't do what the teams wanted them to do, so then they switched their position. There was one of them that I don't remember what year it was or who the name was, but he was drafted as a quarterback and then got transitioned to a punter. So, yeah, the history of Ohio State quarterbacks is awful. And we'll see if Justin Fields can break this, but I I don't know. I'm iffy on this. Justin Fields showed that he can throw it accurately and mobily, and he has fantastic mobility.
Yep.
But
Yep.
it's just the history of Ohio State quarterbacks. I just don't like it.
Neither do I. You and I are on the same page. I truthfully don't see him. I think he's QB5 or QB4. I think he's behind Trey Lance. I like Trey Lance as a prospect. I think he's behind Trey Lance.
So your top three is Lawrence, Wilson, and Lance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
And then
that's respectable.
Fields and then Mac Jones.
Okay,
And
yeah,
then
that's
Kyle
fair.
Trask.
Yes, Kyle Trask to Chicago. Okay. Moving on from quarterbacks, next one we have is Purdue wide receiver Rondale Moore. Some of his logistics that he had at his pro day was he measured in 5'7", which was actually 2 inches shorter than his listed height. He had a 42.7-inch vertical. He had a 4.29 40-yard dash and a 4.01 20-yard shuttle. So to me,
Okay.
This screams a guy like Tyreek Hill, a deep threat who's got a very high vertical jump and can maybe go up and win a few jump balls.
Dude,
But
the thing about
screams
Rondale
deep
Moore,
threat.
yeah, but his injuries are just a big concern. He's injured a lot. Rondale Moore though, that 42-inch vertical is absolutely ridiculous for someone who's 5'7". I'm 5'7". I can't jump that high. Um, I don't think a lot of people my height can jump that high. That is ridiculous. Like
I'm
that is an
6 feet and I
insane
can't
vertical.
jump that high. I can't
Yeah,
jump even close to that.
like that is a ridiculous vertical. The man showed out at his pro day. I don't think he ran a 4.29. I always give a .04 like ahead. So I think he ran like a 4.33, which is still really fast. But
Absolutely.
I he might sneak into the late first. I think he'll still go mid second, but this pro day solidified him in the first 2 rounds easily. Like everyone was worried his pro day was going to drop into like the third. This solidified it. He will definitely be going in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a comparison, Tyreek Hill at the combine also ran a 4.29. So I think that comparison is pretty accurate between Rondale Moore and Tyreek Hill, in my eyes at least.
I agree. I agree 100%. I think Rondale Moore is going to be he'll be a phenomenal receiver. He just needs to stay healthy.
Yeah, I think he'll be a good wide receiver depending on what team he goes with. Because you could
Yep.
have a
System.
Henry Ruggs situation where you're a phenomenal wide receiver prospect. You showed you're an amazing deep threat, but then you don't get into the correct system with Las Vegas. So
I
we'll see.
agree.
We'll see what happens with Rondale Moore. Perhaps the best wide receiver prospect in this draft, most people's top wide receiver prospect in this draft, is LSU wide receiver Jamar Chase. Some statistics from him is he posted a 41-inch vertical jump and an 11-foot broad jump, which is outstanding. And he had a 4.38 40-yard dash. So Jamar Chase, I think he's wide receiver 1 in this draft.
Oh, you don't even need to think he is. The thing about Jamar Chase that's funny is that he didn't even have to play last year. Like he said, "No, I'm just gonna prepare for the draft." He came out as pro day and just basically showed that, yeah, I'm still here. Like everyone was like considering like, oh, Jalen Waddle, oh, Devonta Smith. No, it's Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase will go in the top six. In the only reason why I say top six is because wherever Cincinnati goes is where Jamar Chase is either going or he's going after, like right after.
Right,
He will
because
not.
keep
Yeah,
going,
he will not
sorry.
drop. He will not drop, and like that's the hardest part.
Right, because Joe Burrow there's been articles that he's pushing for Cincinnati to draft Jamar Chase to reunite them as teammates so that way they can build back their chemistry. And they showed that they were one of the best college offensive units in college football history, honestly. They were so unstoppable and unbeatable. And that would be scary if Cincinnati drafted Jamar Chase. But then they also still have that offensive line that they need help on because Joe Burrow's coming off a torn ACL because honestly, because his offensive line couldn't do him enough. They didn't protect him as well as they should have. So
I agree. They're gonna go, but they Jamar Chase could very well go there and land with Joe Burrow.
absolutely he could.
Like
But for
that's
me,
my number one right now. For me, is I'm thinking that. And you and I have two completely different thoughts.
right. I like Jamar Chase as much as the next guy, but if somehow if Penny Sewell is there when Cincinnati's on the board, you gotta take him. You got to take
Do
Penny
you
Sewell.
though?
I think so because you need to get Joe Burrow some help. You spent a number 1 overall pick on him last year, and you saw that he was one of the top quarterbacks him and Joe Burrow were 1A, 1, or excuse me, him and Justin Herbert were 1A, 1B last year until Joe Burrow went down. I think my take on this is that if Joe Burrow didn't get hurt, he would have beat out Herbert for Rookie of the Year.
See, and this is where I say, but T. Higgins and Jamar Chase next to each other, and then you go in the second and address what you need. I mean, there's still a high pick. There's still going to be some linemen that fall. I'd go Jamar Chase all day long, and I'll scream into the
Yeah,
sunset
I
all
mean,
day.
like I said earlier, it is a deep tackle class, so we'll see what does. It'll
He
be
reminds me. Jamar Chase reminds me of a D Hop.
okay. That's
Just
accurate.
the consistency, the catch radius, all of it. Jamar Chase is going to be a superstar. He is a guaranteed lock to be a superstar, and he guaranteed going to take over the league in his first year.
All right. Yeah, I like Jamar Chase a lot. He's an outstanding prospect, outstanding wide receiver. Moving on from the wide receivers, we have perhaps the best uh, prospect in the draft outside of Trevor Lawrence. We have Florida tight end Kyle Pitts. Some statistics from him is he posted a massive 83 and 3/8 of an inch of a wingspan, which is the longest recorded wingspan in prospect history. I'm pretty sure he beat out DK Metcalf for that. He measured in at 6'6", 245 pounds. He had a 33.5-inch vertical jump and a 10'9" broad jump, and he ran a 4.44 40-yard dash, same as Justin Fields.
Okay,
I
so
love
you
Kyle
go.
Pitts. That's all I'm gonna say. I love Kyle Pitts.
God, we have differing views. Um, when I see Kyle Pitts, dude, it screams Evan Ingram to me. It screams Evan Ingram. It screams David Njoku. I mean, both tight ends that were supposed to be the best tight end to ever come out of the class, and they just didn't pan out. Kyle Pitts is good because he can catch, but his blocking is questionable. People could say he can block all they want. He's super questionable. I watch a lot of Gators games. He's very. If I'm looking at a tight end to play more positions, I'm looking at Brevin Jordan more than I am Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is going to be good for like a receiving threat, but you want a prime example of what I think will happen to him? Look at Devin Funchess. He played tight end in college, switched to wide receiver because he was better at catching the ball than he was blocking.
It's actually an interesting comparison because I was reading up on Kyle Pitts earlier, and he said that not a single NFL team has asked him to switch to wide receiver. And he also has earned Calvin Johnson comparisons, which
Oh, come on.
I know, but they also compared DK Metcalf to Calvin Johnson, which in my opinion is inaccurate. And Calvin Johnson is probably one of the most dominant receiver. He's the most dominant receiver I've ever seen play. I wasn't into football enough when Randy Moss was playing, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with Kyle Pitts. He has had multiple visits with the Falcons, who I believe have the 4th pick.
Yeah, they
So
do.
yeah, I
I
mean,
don't see, dude, I don't see him being Megatron though. The comparisons to Megatron need to stop. Like,
yeah.
I think that player comparisons are silly. Like I saw an article the other day. I read it and I looked into the player and I kind of thought it was a little accurate. But my uncle is the guy I go to with a lot of football stuff. My uncle kind of pointed it out as well. It was Seth Williams from Auburn, and they compared him to Devontae Adams. And I was
Oh
like,
God.
look, Seth Williams is a good wide receiver, but Devontae Adams, like, if we can get him in like the 5th, then absolutely, or the 4th, absolutely, take a chance, work him up. But like, no one's gonna let a Devontae Adams fall that far. Like, I think that the comparisons are just silly because you never really know how a prospect's gonna be. You never know work ethic. You want a prime example of you don't know what you get in a draft pick? Isaiah Wilson.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
You
I was
never
reading
know.
an ESPN article on Kyle Pitts today, and he had an interview where he said that he believes that he can be the best tight end to ever play. He he was very close to a Vernon Davis 40-yard dash time. I believe Vernon Davis posted a 4.39, 4.38, somewhere around there. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and like, dude, I think Kyle Pitts blocking is just too questionable. Like, it's a very questionable blocking problem.
okay, but you also have guys like Travis Kelce, who isn't a phenomenal blocker either, but he's
Yeah.
probably the best tight end in the NFL.
Oh, George Kittle, come on now.
Yes, George Kittle was hurt, but best all around tight end, George Kittle, hands down. But I think best tight end still goes to Travis Kelce, and he can't really. He's not a phenomenal blocker. He can block somewhat, but he's not amazing at it.
Robert Tiny has entered the chat.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with Kyle Pitts. I like Kyle Pitts a lot. I think that if he goes to Atlanta, because Atlanta parted ways with Austin Hooper a few years ago when he went to Cleveland, So I think that he'll probably go to Atlanta. That's my guess for Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. I'm moving on from the subject before I lose my mind.
Okay. Well, that's actually all we've got. So there wasn't too much news that had happened, but as the draft gets closer, we will, in a future episode, once Jack comes back, we will do a collective mock draft with us three. So we will all make one mock draft together. So that'll be something to watch out for. We'll see if that's next week. We'll see if that's a few weeks from now. But thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you in the next episode. See ya.
Yeah.